Monopoly by Michelle Aco, Raven Highland, and Bianca Highland.
What is monopoly? A monopoly is a market dominated by a single seller. This means that you can only buy a product from only one person.
A monopoly firm faces a downward sloping demand curve for its product. Monopoly firms make decisions without considering the reactions of other firms.
The monopoly demand curve is downward sloping. Marginal revenue is less than price. To sell to another customer, a seller usually must lower price to all customers.
Short-run equilibrium. A monopoly faces a downward sloping demand curve. The price selected affects the quantity that can be sold. Monopolies have no supply curve.
A monopoly maximizes profit by reducing the quantity where marginal cost equals marginal revenue. It sells the good for the highest price buyers would pay for the quantity.
Monopoly profit, another way to graph it. Markup is price minus average cost. The monopoly's profit equals its markup times the number of goods that it sells.
Dead weight social loss from monopoly. Monopolies cause economic inefficiency. A monopoly charges a price above marginal cost. Monopolies do not sell additional units of a good even though people will pay for it.
Perfectly competitive industries produce economically efficient quantities. Monopolies produce less than efficient quantities and charge a price above marginal cost.
Long-run equilibrium. A firm can remain a monopoly in the long run only if barriers to entry keep other firms out. Natural monopoly. Increasing returns to scale exists if the average cost of production decreases with higher output. Natural monopoly may occur if production requires high fixed costs.
A natural monopoly is an industry with increasing returns to scale over sufficiently large quantities. It may be cheaper for one firm to produce all of the industry output rather than many firms producing small portions of that output.
The potential benefits to a new firm may attract entry into a natural monopoly industry. For example, Microsoft faces continual threats of entry from companies offering potential alternatives to Microsoft's operating system.
Natural monopoly and economic efficiency. The natural monopoly level of output is not economically efficient. Do you hear that, Brian and Jerome? It is not economically efficient. I repeat, it is not economically efficient.
Barriers to entry are cost high enough to prevent potential competitors from entering an industry.
Barriers to entry may be natural. That means that they result from lower costs of production at the monopoly firm.
Barriers to entry may also be artificial. Barriers to entry may also be artificial as a result from laws or government regulation. This may include franchises, license requirements, patents, and copyrights.
How do monopolies start? They start with governmental protection, with legislation that creates artificial barriers, also when a firm acquires most or all of a unique input needed to produce a good, with firms' inventions or patents, and when firms reduce costs and gain efficiencies over other firms.
Cartels. A cartel is a group of firms, members of the cartel, that try to come together to act like a monopoly and share the monopoly profit.
Problems facing cartels. Members must be convinced to come to coincidental interests. Production levels or quotas must be agreed upon. Also, profits must be divided to the cartel members' satisfaction. Members who may cheat must be controlled.
Antitrust policy. Antitrust laws prohibit monopolies and cartels or monopoly-like behaviors. For example, the Sherman Act of 1890 and the Clayton Act of 1914 are the main antitrust laws in the United States.
Antitrust laws. Antitrust laws prohibit the following: predatory pricing, which is a seller charging less than its average cost to drive a competitor out of business. Tie-in sales are when a seller offers to sell products only to people who also buy other products. Mergers are two firms joining together to form one firm. And price discrimination.
What is price discrimination? Price discrimination means charging different prices to different buyers for the same good. For example, two products are not the same if production costs differ.
Perfect price discrimination occurs when a seller charges each customer the highest price she is willing to pay. For example, a monopoly that practices perfect price discrimination creates no deadweight social loss.
Difficulties with perfect price discrimination. 1. Sellers must know the highest price that each buyer is willing to pay. Buyers have no incentive to tell them. Sellers must prevent buyers from reselling their goods.
Imperfect price discrimination. Profits are increased by selling at higher prices to groups willing to pay more. For example, sellers must determine who will pay higher prices and who will not. Applications of monopoly. Monopolies incentives for cost reduction and innovation. For example, monopolies may feel a weaker incentive to produce at the lowest possible cost. This disincentive can extend to research and development costs.
Product durability. Monopolies benefit by producing products that are not durable. Planned obsolescence puts downward pressure on price. People are willing to pay more for products that last longer.
Competitions to become a monopoly. Number 1. Firms may be forced to compete for the right to be a monopoly seller. 2. The highest price a company would pay for a monopoly is the discounted present value of all future profits. Number 3. This competition reduces the winner's economic profit to zero.
Rent seeking. Rent seeking is competition for favors from the government. It can create economic inefficiency.
Monopoly bias. A monopoly buyer is often called a monopsony. A monopoly buyer can reduce the price it pays for a product by reducing its purchases. Because it buys less than the efficient quantity, a monopsony results in deadweight social loss.
Jerome's Daily Red Dinner. Dollar, bala, got $3, dollars. Don't forget your rats. Holla!